So if we can have you silence your phones if possible, please. If anybody has any questions they would like to ask, I've given most all of you guys a note card. I can come pick those up for you, and then Chuck will consolidate those. And if you need any more note cards, just let me know. There's a couple
Thank
more.
you.
So on behalf of Thomas Jefferson Gardens, thank you for coming. We will try to keep everything very civil. Let everybody speak when they need to, you know, typical rules. So with all due, I'll let Chuck go ahead.
Thank you, Danielle. I'm Chuck Offenburger. I'm pinch hitting today for Rick Moraine, who's our #1 moderator for nearly every program that happens in Greene County. And most of you know, Rick had a heart attack a week ago Tuesday. Actually started during the city council meeting that he was covering, and he went home and it got worse. So he got, Kathy got him to Greene County Hospital, and they stabilized him that night, took him to Mary Greeley and Ames overnight, and they did more scans and studies and decided he was gonna have to have heart surgery. So they took him to Mercy the next morning, and then Wednesday, and on Thursday, so a week ago this past Thursday, he had the heart surgery, and they put in 4 stents or 3 stents, I can't remember which. And he instantly felt better. He felt the best he's felt in years, with good blood flow and everything clear. And so he's recovering well. He's just been banned from hosting meetings or covering anything now. And so that's why I'm here filling in today. But the guy, as he has throughout his life as a community servant and leader, sets a high bar for all of us, because this week's edition of the Jefferson Herald will be known as the Rick Moraine Heart Attack Edition. And he's got 2 stories on page 1, a 3rd story on page 3, and then his column on page 4, which explains his whole heart attack. And so, I mean, there's no slowing the guy down. But I look forward to this discussion today. We appreciate Senator Greene and Representative Nordman coming and sharing their time on a Saturday morning with us. We'll all get this done, and we can get back to real March Madness. So the Hawkeyes, Cyclone women play at 11 o'clock, I think, and the Hawkeyes play at what time?
Around 3:30.
3:30 this afternoon. So we're all basketball nuts now, and but it'll be good. So I remember we're going to let you 2 open up, and each of you can make a statement. We probably got 4 minutes, 5 minutes if you want to take that long. And the thing that might guide us today for discussion, and you can think about this as you're filling out your questions, and we'll move on. But I do remember back at caucus time, I think it was just before the caucus, somebody interviewed Tom Harkin, and he said, what are the big issues going to be in the campaign this year? And he said, well, economy, guns, abortion, and eminent domain. And I think they all sort of arrived in Greene County this week. So it should be an interesting discussion here today. Who's going to lead off today?
Well, I can. I'll be
Carter.
pretty short. And Chuck, maybe since we have a smaller crowd,
Yeah.
we can do the questions, but maybe have more of a discussion
Yeah,
too
sure.
with people. I'd be fine with
That'd
that.
be great.
I think that would work with the size of crowd today. So thanks for being here. Spend another busy month at the Capitol. 2 of the main things I will touch on, and I won't get too deep into opening because I'm sure we'll have a conversation about it, but the House did pass 3 education bills this last month. We passed a 3% SSA. We passed our version of the AA's bill, and then we also just this last week passed our version of the teacher pay increase bill. So there's been a big focus on education this past month. We also have a couple school safety bills that are coming through. We sent over, I think there was a subcommittee on the Senate on our main school safety bill as well. So like I said, I think we're going to have a lot of discussion about it, so I won't get into it here, and try to get to your questions sooner rather than later.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for coming today. And yeah, this past month has been quite interesting to say the least. This AAs are still heart and center of all the conversations, and it's really hard to sometimes have some of the other conversations when so much time is being spent on this. But rightly so. I mean, we're talking about a very sensitive topic with special education here in Iowa, and so it needs to be thoroughly vetted. And that's what I really appreciate about this process is a lot of different people are looking at this situation and sharing their opinions. In the House, you know, I think it's really interesting that in the House you have a former AA director that is a representative. And as that bill, the House bill has come through the process, I don't think it's any surprise that you can see that an AA director was primarily involved in those conversations. On the Senate side, we have a former school superintendent that's a new senator. He's the one that's been floor managing the AA conversation and really driving the conversation in the Senate. So I think it's fascinating that in the last 2 months of conversation that the Senate's version is coming from a superintendent's point of view. And then all throughout this process, I've heard from superintendents and AA people as well as citizens, and so I do really feel that we will come out with a final product, but it just might have to go to a conference committee. It might have to also separate out the teacher salary component as well as SSA and have a separate conversation on that. So I look forward to that. In the Senate this past week, one bill I don't think got much attention that I thought was interesting was Senate File 2340. That's our illegal immigration bill in the Senate. It just, you know, after I was doing some research on it, when I saw it on the debate calendar, I didn't realize how monumental of a bill this is. It's the second, we're the only second state to pass it out of the legislature. Texas was the first, and what this bill does is it makes being an illegal immigrant actually illegal in state law. And what this does is it gives local law enforcement more options when they run into a situation where, let's say, hypothetically, they have somebody pulled over on a traffic charge or whatever, and they have no documentation. They can then hold them to make sure that go through the right channels to check what their immigration status is or make sure if they're legal or not. And so there's been many cases around the state where law enforcement feels like that their hands are tied. And the reality is, since Biden has taken office, there's been 7.2 million illegal immigrants that have entered into the country. That is more than 33 states' populations as a total. And so there's a problem. And when the federal government is not fixing that problem, I think states sometimes feel powerless, but they're not. Like states have options in the toolbox. You just got to get ahead of it and start tackling it yourself. And so, so I'm really proud that we're having that conversation. The Texas law is actually in the court system, and so we should be getting a ruling on the Texas law before we even get our law to the governor's desk. So it'll be interesting how that shakes out. The second thing, when we're talking about that, fentanyl is, again, I think one of the biggest, is the biggest problem facing our citizens. It's the #1 killer between ages of 18 and 45 years old is fentanyl. It just blows my mind and shocks me. In House File 2576, the House did good work on this and is sitting in the Senate now. It creates a first-degree murder charge for delivery of fentanyl to another person that results in the death of that person. So I think, again, the state of Iowa is being proactive and taking this situation seriously. One of my personal bills that I was really happy to get off the floor, and some of you, and I'd be more than happy to share some more information with you, is vaccine disclosure, exemption disclosure bill. Many schools around the state have unfortunately either misled or sometimes lied to parents as to what current law is. If no shots, no school is a lie. There are religious and medical exemptions available in Iowa code. Every state but 5 states has a religious exemption. And so a lot of parents do not know what Iowa code is, and it's a very small section of code. What my bill does is make sure that on the student registration form as well as on the website and any communication relating to vaccines that the parent sees what Iowa code is. That's all it is. Let's have an honest conversation. That's all I care about with that. So it doesn't change or add any new exemptions. Lastly, and then if you don't mind at the end, I'd like, if there's something that wasn't touched on, I'd like to have an opportunity to touch on them. But we're having a couple constitutional amendment conversations about taxes. One of them is that it would require 2/3 of a majority to raise the income tax. We have had this conversation in the past, and we're having it again this year. The other constitutional amendment would require that all future taxes be a flat tax. So I believe that one is sitting in the House, but that's another conversation to keep your eyes on as session progresses.
And those are both constitutional amendments proposed or in the works?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And when you look around the country, there are blue states and red states that have similar constitutional amendments in regards to 2/3 majority raising income taxes. So it's not a purely a Republican issue.
Let's start. We'll both down these questions that have been submitted, and then we can open up for more open discussion if you want to do that. First one, Carter. Why did you vote for Senate File 455? And this person says the stormwater runoff bill. Does that tip you? What?
Yeah, I think we are seeing around the state and some cities where there is very old infrastructure in place. And when a new development comes in and they start building, all that cost then is put on the home builder, which then ultimately becomes the cost of the person purchasing the home. And so it's driving costs up. We have a affordable housing issue in this state. And so this bill essentially says you cannot be more restrictive than what the Iowa DNR says. There was also an amendment though that said if you need to be more restrictive, then the city or county needs to pay for the studies and the plans for the new development for the stormwater, and then also the pay 50% of the new infrastructure. So I think it was a fair compromise. I think it's a way to ensure that we're not putting all the burden on the homeowners when usually what's taking place is there's old infrastructure already in place.
And so again, the proposed resolution of that is what?
In the bill?
Yeah.
It's the city would be required to pay for those plans for the new infrastructure. They would also have to pay 50% of putting that infrastructure in, along with the home builders. Right now, really, if it's higher than the what DNR restrictions are, the home builders on the hook.
Okay. Good.
Which really just drives up housing costs.
Yeah, got it. When we ask these questions, if this is your question and you don't feel like you got an answer, you can raise your hand if you want to identify yourself, and we can pursue it. So I'll assume that you're happy with that response unless you want to raise your hand now. So, okay. Environmental question, I think. February 2024 was the 9th consecutive month for record heat for us here. Iowa cannot control what is being done in other states on issues increasing temperatures. Doing big things in Iowa gives us hope for the planet, our families, and our communities. What's being done at the legislative level to lower the effect of Iowa activities or industry or whatever that would be helping raise the temperature? Is there anything that's addressing this from that you're aware of? I guess it's a climate, maybe a climate change thing, but it's I guess the increased temperature is undeniable for the 9 months here. So,
well, the first thoughts that come to my mind, that's a great question, that was one of the conversations that was driving the ethanol conversation. It's a clean source of energy and alternative energy, a renewable energy. So that was one reason why the E15 bill did get passed here a couple years ago. You're having the conversation when it comes to pipelines, right? But you're also, that's encompassing a huge conversation on private property rights as well as carbon sequestration. So that conversation's being had. I just had a county supervisor reach out to me 2 weeks ago about windmills, and I believe there's roughly 10 counties in the state that have outright banned windmills, and I think that's a little bit extreme. But at the same time, we all believe in local control as much as possible. But I think windmills is a separate conversation than, let's say, pipelines. I think it's a completely different conversation. If one landowner agrees to a windmill and the neighbor doesn't like it, I think there needs to be setback rules and stuff like that, similar to like hog confinements. When we developed the master matrix with hog confinements, I think the legislature needs to take action in regards to rules with windmills as well. And so that's not just the Wild Wild West when it comes to rules and regulations on windmills. I thought I saw somewhere that the state of Iowa is like one of the highest exporters of renewable energy in the nation, if not the highest. So that's something to be proud of. You're seeing it in the ag community. I talked about this at the last forum, so I won't expound on it. But in the last 20 years since I've been farming, like just such a change in mindset when it comes to conservation practices, and that also impacts carbon as well. So off the top of my head, those are the first thoughts that kind of come to mind. That's a great question. Thank you.
Okay, Carter, want to weigh in on that at all? Anything you spotted in the?
No, I think Jesse covered most of it. Like I said, we are an exporter of renewable energy. I think that's something that we can be proud of. We're one of the windiest states in the nation. We should capitalize on that and continue to advance renewable energy where we can.
Let's go to this. Mental health issues are a daily issue in Iowa and the U.S. I think we all know that. Current reports include, parents stealing kids, bullying behavior, suicides, domestic abuse, drug abuse, thefts, transportation issues. So where are we in this session of the legislature? What issues do you think are addressing that, the mental health issues that we have, and also with an eye on funding? How are we doing on that?
Funding-wise, we spent in total in the state of Iowa over $1 billion on mental health last year. So I don't think we are underfunding mental health. The main concern that I think most providers have is staffing, is not being able to find a workforce to provide care. And we're seeing that across the country. Talked about this last month a bit, but some of the things that we've done, we created 12 new psychiatric residency programs through the University of Iowa, $1 million a year additional to expand loan forgiveness for new providers, higher Medicaid rate for those needing higher level of care, eliminated non-competes within mental health professions, and then we're also looking at how we conduct our mental health regions, making sure that people are able to get care as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So I think it's a multi-pronged approach. I think we're doing a decent job at finding those solutions, but ultimately it does come down to, I think, the workforce, and that's a struggle for everybody.
Go ahead, Senator.
So the only thing I would add to that, a couple years ago we expanded a telehealth parity. So that means if you're counseling on through telehealth, that you get paid and reimbursed the same amount as if you were in person. So I think that was a big step in the right direction. I also saw that the governor last year invested $4 million into the rural healthcare loan repayment and recruitment program. I believe that also impacts psychiatrists. So we need to continue to have that conversation and keep funding that. I do think Medicaid reimbursement rates are going to continue to be a conversation. I see it being a bipartisan issue at this point. And so that'll impact mental health. But lastly, the more of the studies that I see on this topic, especially with children, is you cannot separate out screen time and social media and mental health with the kids. I think it's just so obvious and plain as day that there's a big problem that our society is facing with that. I didn't see the details, but I saw that the Florida legislature passed out that there would be a ban on social media for 16 and under, but Governor DeSantis vetoed it for some reason. I'm not sure the details on that, but I appreciate that conversation. We need to get serious about our minors and social media. And to me, that's the number one issue facing mental health.
You mentioned the same thing last forum when you had your Carter.
Yeah, I think when it comes to social media, we're doing a couple social media bills, but I think think some other states have done it, I would be in favor of banning cell phones in schools. Everybody else survived without cell phones in schools. I think so can this generation. So I'd be in support. I think they're a huge distraction in schools.
Coming off the mental health question, this person says spending time outdoors improves our mental and physical health. Trails, I'll throw in equestrian trails, the other state parks, the other kind of recreational benefits. Canoe trails are a big thing now, and big development in Des Moines downtown on it. How is all that recreation and outdoor resources? How is that faring in this session? Anything big coming, or?
I don't think there's any major legislation on it. It will be another topic of discussion when budget times come around. We always fund those things through the budget, so we're not quite there yet, so I don't know what that funding will look like, but I'm supportive of our recreational land in the state of Iowa. I think we got some great state parks, so we'll continue to be an advocate for it.
Yeah, so yesterday, we're just starting to enter into the budget time frame, and so I appreciate the question. Yesterday I was talking with one of our staffers, and I think when it comes to trails, the number one budget to keep an eye on is the RIF budget. I didn't realize that until about a year ago or within the last year. I thought with RIF, and what RIF is, that's where the money is that comes from gambling money in casinos. And so if you think about, as you try to be efficient with the tax dollars, it makes sense to try to pay for as much stuff as possible out of the RIF budget and not out of the general fund, because it's paid for by casino dollars, not the average taxpayer dollars. And so, but in that budget, there's about 42 million in regards to trails and water quality issues. And so you would naturally think that the ag and natural resource budget would be the main budget for that. And it seems to be that that budget is more administrative costs and issues like that. So as I think about the future, like where do I want to serve and have my main voice, I'm trying to pick and choose which paths I want to go down. Do I want to try to be the chairman for the ag and natural resource budget, or would I rather try to be chairman someday of the RIF budget? And so I can have a voice in this. And I think there is a lot more we can do with recreation and water quality in particular. And I think based on my background, I can really have a strong voice in that. And it's not, that might surprise some of you, because some of the legislation that's come out is in regards to land acquisition and trying to limit some of that land acquisition. And you've seen some efforts within the Senate and the House to try to force us to focus on management of lands rather than acquisition of lands. And so, so I think if you look at it from a holistic point of view, you can kind of see maybe where I'm coming from and where I'd like to go in the future. But I'm really proud of the investments that we've made with trails and water quality. I just want to make sure that we do even more with that and shift it from acquisition, less from acquisition into management. She's got a question.
I just want to follow up. Are you lumping canoe trails, kayak trails with all the water quality issues that come from ag runoff?
So,
in my mind, they're two separate issues.
But it comes out of the similar budgets.
And is that fair to people who are truly concerned about the quality of our drinking water?
Well, I was just coming at it from when I look at it from my angle as to how to tackle some of these issues. It's hard for me to separate. Those are separate line items within the budget. So
They're
right.
not lumped together.
That was my question. If you're not trying to fund recreation out of the same, if you're not trying to fund water quality issues out of the same pot of money that is for horse trails or walking trails, or these things.
No, they're line items.
Thank you.
Let's go to the AEAs, just brief us where we are on this. And we've got 3 questions on this. But I think all are just asking for an update of where we are, what that legislation looks like at this point. But tell us, starting off, Senator Green, about who were the superintendent and former AEA director who are now in the legislature. I've missed that.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Our system of government, we have a citizens legislature. The right voices are in the room for this conversation. And so I think you can take hope and pride in that I do think a really solid bill is going to come out of this situation. So it's Lynn Evans. He's from the Cherokee area. He would be the senator that used to be a superintendent for a lot of years. And then Brent Segrist is a representative from Council Bluffs. I think he used to be the House
He was speaker one time, yeah.
Yep. And so those are the two main legislative voices that I can tell from my angle in the conversation. So
Was he an AEA director over in the Bluffs?
I don't think
I know he was
a
associated
director,
with
but
the.
he did work at the AAs.
Okay.
I'll find out for sure. I don't know. I don't think he was a director.
okay.
Yeah. But
So,
go
so
ahead.
there's,
He may have
so,
been.
so there's different levels of administration. So you have your directors, and then you have another tier of directors. And to that point, one concern that is in both, in a lot of conversations that were top heavy in the AEAs, there's only 40% of the AEA budgets that actually go into the classroom for instruction and services for special education. So that tells me I think there's a little bloat in the upper tier of the AEAs, and so that's regardless of who you talk to, whether it's superintendents or the governor's staff or the House members, there's consistency within that. And so we need to try to figure that out. I don't want to go down the rabbit trail without you guys. So what was the next part of the question?
Just what shape is this gonna wind up in at the end of the session?
So
I should point out too, I think one of you just mentioned this, we're about halfway through right now, right? Of the whole session?
Well, supposed to be.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll see about that.
Yeah.
Supposed to be halfway through. The House did pass our version of the AA bill. We kind of separated into a phased-in kind of system. And I want to preface with, we have spoken to countless superintendents, AEA chiefs, employees, teachers, staff, principals, special educators. We have focused on making sure that everyone is at the table for this conversation. Spoken with the Greene County superintendent, and he supports the bill. He came to the public hearing and publicly stated that he supports it. So I'm not outing him there. But we do a phased-in kind of tiered system. 2024-2025 school year gives Department of Education oversight over AA budget and accreditation, makes the AA chief salaries comparable to superintendent salaries, and creates the task force to review AA systems and make recommendations to the legislature by December 31st of 2024. In the 2025-2026 school year, AA boards become advisory. School districts get control over how to spend the media service money. AA chiefs are required to have special education endorsements. Department of Education takes over professional development, and special education dollars stop at the school districts, but they are required to use the AEA for their special education services. 2026 through 2027, school districts get control how to spend their media services and education services money. Special education dollars continue to stop at the school districts, but districts are required to use the AEAs for special education services. So we're phasing it in. The biggest feedback that we heard from both the AEAs and the superintendents were that the timeline was too quick in the original bill, and there was some confusion on the opt-in, opt-out, and so this timeline, I think, helps that. The AEAs have also moved their registration from opposed of the bill to neutral. So they are no longer opposing the bill that the House passed. So I think that's a big step forward too. So that's kind of where the House is at.
Where will the Senate be on that?
So it's definitely a little bit different conversation. So in the House bill, I don't think special education dollars are touched at all as to how it flows through and how it's divvied out. And correct me if I'm wrong. In the Senate, we have more fee-for-service language within ours. And to me, that's one of the biggest concerns that I had coming into this conversation is that we're the only state that mandates that a school get a service from a provider that is paid by the states and not the school. And so in a system like that, I think you're going to have an increase in cost of those services. It's just human nature and how that works. So I do get some of the fears on the other side of that, the economy of scale arguments, which is, take for example a rural district, and you take the largest school district and they go off the reservation and kind of do their own thing. What's going to happen to the AEA services for those other rural schools? I think that's the strongest argument that I'm still trying to wrestle with to make sure that I'm comfortable. And so I was a little disappointed that the Senate didn't vote out our bill last week. It wasn't a final product. Usually 99% of the time when we vote out a bill in the Senate, it's a final product that we want in code. Given how different the House bill is and the Senate bill and the governor's idea, I knew that if we pass that bill out of the Senate, there's going to be probably a conference committee that's going to take place to iron out the details. And so I was a little bit disappointed that we pulled that bill off the schedule last week. But I hope that kind of explains it. If we need to extend the years as far as the phase out from the current structure to a fee-for-service model, I'm open ears for that. I get the fears of that, and so I'd be willing to extend that time frame of how we shift to fee-for-service. And let's say, as we shift that, we start seeing problems, like some of the services aren't as good, we can always change it and go back. But at the end of the day, we want the best quality services to our students at the best cost.
And
Go
ahead.
If I can, yeah. I have to say I do agree with a number of things that are in the Senate's bill. I agree with a number of things that's in the governor's bill. The media services, to me, should be one of the first things that are phased in. Every single superintendent that I talk to say, the media services, we really don't know what we get out of that. Panorama, I'm not even sure they know if they use the media services, but that money flows through to the AAs regardless. And so I think the media services are something, and the AAs have told us directly. We met with the three of the chiefs, and they specifically said, yes, we could do many different things with media services. We do not need a print shop in every single AAA district. We could centralize it and make it way more efficient. My question is then, why haven't you? And I think that starts creating the question of, well, where else are there inefficiencies? So there are a number of things that I agree with. I do think where the House is at, I'm not sure how much further the House will go outside of this.
The one thing I kept hearing from rank and file public, and this would be people who are not involved directly in those services, but are just watching it and reading about it, and may have experienced it in the past with their own children. But what about the salary? I think everybody was a little shocked when the salaries of the AEA chiefs came out, and it was $300,000 a year or something like that. Is that changing or not?
Yeah, so our bill would address, I think all three bills address it actually. But yeah, I mean, total compensation of an AEA chief average was $300,000. I think that's a lot of money. So this would create, you would have to do the average of your district's supervisors or superintendents. Yep. So.
But that AEA chief is about a superintendent level job. I mean, just in
The top
lay terms.
Yeah.
I would say a dream job for a superintendent would be an AEA chief.
Well, and that's why we're having this conversation about teacher salary at the same time. There's a lot of bleeding out into the public school system, into the AAs, because it's less stress and higher pay. So that's why this is a really interesting, complicated topic, and it's all kind of intertwined.
What about, let's talk, oh wait a minute, go ahead.
I am wondering what connection there is between things like AEA chief salaries and improved outcomes for students with disabilities. I'm not seeing the connection between the things in the bill that are being addressed and how those will make the learning environment and outcome for those students any better.
Yeah, I think we can have two conversations at the same time, addressing student outcomes while also ensuring that we're overlooking and overseeing a agency that has been around for 50 years with not a whole lot of reform. There were, at one point was there 15 AEAs dropped down to 9, so there has been reform along those 50 years, but I personally think the AEA chief salaries are too high, and I think that is, while we're having this discussion, that's something we can talk about as well.
Let's,
But that doesn't answer my question.
let's try it one more time. What
Yeah.
specifically, what's the question?
The question is how will a special education student's learning environment be changed because an AEA chief salary was changed?
I didn't say it would. I said that there are two separate conversations in my opinion. Does
But
a
they're
chief's
both
salary,
isn't
does a chief's salary specifically impact the outcomes of special education? No, but we are talking about reforms of the AEA. And so that is part of these reforms.
Which parts of the reforms in the bill that you have in either the House or Senate are directly related to outcomes?
Well, talking with sorry, you wanna go?
Well, I would say that's where the fee for service comes in. Where Greene County, for example, I think there's some services that Greene County feels that they can do better with somebody, a different provider. I think at the end of the day, the schools know best. I think superintendents knows what's best for their schools. And so I think 98% of the money is still going to stay with and services are going to still stay with the AEAs, but in those other cases, kind of like Greene County situation, there will be some changes as far as who provides the services. And so that would heighten the quality of the services for that district.
The superintendents that I've spoken to echo Jesse's point, say that we believe if we had some control over the money, we would be able to provide some better services and situations for our students. That's coming directly from the superintendents and special educators that are at the school.
We're going to go to another topic. This week, I saw that the bill came up about arming teachers in schools. And I'm not sure if it included other staff members or not, but teachers at least. I think our former representative, Phil Thompson, is sponsoring that bill. I don't know if you're on as a co-sponsor, Carter, or not, but I think you ran the bill, didn't you, in the discussion in the committee?
Yeah, so pretty disappointed in the Des Moines Register article that came out. It was a very misleading and inaccurate headline, and I told them that. But there's two separate bills. There's the bill that Representative Thompson ran which, by the way, under current law, a school absolutely can authorize a teacher or staff to carry a firearm now. If nothing changes, a school could do that. The problem that some of the schools that have done that ran into has been a problem with EMC insurance. EMC insurance has a monopoly across the state of 98% of the schools are insured by EMC. There are other states that have programs like this. So what our bill does, that Representative Thompson ran, creates a professional permit where you would have to go through extensive training in order to get that permit. I'll just list some of the trainings that we outline in the bill. Active shooter scenarios, hostage situations, legal training on qualified immunity, annual emergency medical trainings, annual communications training, annual life scenario training, quarterly live firearm training, 50 rounds a month with accuracy requirements, which deputies have to do this only once a year, pass an annual background check, and any additional requirements that a school district deems important. That's 6 months of extensive in-person training plus additional in-class instruction. But let me be very, very, very clear. This is 150% voluntary for the school districts, for teachers, and for staffs. Under no circumstance will any teacher or staff or school be forced to have armed personnel in their district. And I think that is what the inaccurate and misleading headlines have been, alluding that the legislature is forcing teachers to start carrying guns. We have a school in Spirit Lake who did a phenomenal job at creating a school safety plan that included armed personnel within that safety plan. Matter of fact, the Panorama superintendent was a part of that program, and he carried at Spirit Lake as a principal. There was an incident where
we're talking public schools in both places, right?
Both public schools, absolutely. They unfortunately had to take that out of their safety plan because EMC insurance said we're no longer going to insure you. There are other insurance companies around the country that will insure firearms in schools, but they are not here in Iowa because they don't know how to insure the natural disasters that we have. So that's the only reason why they won't insure the school buildings. But there was an incident at Spirit Lake where the alarm system company for a school shooting tripped a wire and it went off. The SRO that they had full time,
School resource
yep,
officer.
school resource officer, was out in the parking lot watching kids come out, tapping on windows, looking around, seeing if, is this real? Is this fake? The people who responded immediately were the people that went through this extensive training. The staff members that went through this training showed up immediately and did exactly what they were supposed to do and waited for the police response to come. They were there within seconds. In Perry, it took as phenomenal as the police, the law enforcement could not have done a better job in Perry in responding to that. But even under the best circumstances with Perry's response with law enforcement, it still took 7 minutes. If there was a competent person behind that gun, that could have been a lot more dead people. I think we have to take that in consideration. I think this is a tool and toolbox for school districts to do if they choose. It addresses the insurance issue. My bill, the separate bill, has a grant, a $3 million grant in it that
Oh yeah, I saw that. Go ahead.
Yep, that would help the startup cost of these programs.
That's in a separate bill. Right?
That's a separate bill.
And $3 million to the state.
Yep, up to $25,000 per school. Not every school is going to do this. Is going to put this into their safety plan, which is fine. That's up to them. But a number of schools are, and there's cost with it. There is equipment costs. There's training costs. Maybe if they want to give a stipend, say, hey, 15 staff members that are doing this training, you're spending a lot of time doing this, we want to give you $1,000 stipend for your time. So they can do a lot of things with that grant money, but it helps with that.
This passed out of the committee, didn't it?
Yes, the Representative Thompson's bill is in the Senate and it passed out of subcommittee in the Senate. My bill is eligible for the floor on Monday.
Okay. Jesse, how is this landing in the Senate?
Yeah, so to that superintendent I just told you about, Senator Evans, he's going to be floor managing the bill, is floor managing it, and so he came from that Cherokee area that Spirit Lake and some of these other schools that have some background knowledge on. So I'm really confident in his ability to vet this and make sure that it's good to go. A couple things that I don't think that, to kind of piggyback off his points, 33 other states allow this already, and so it's been vetted, very vetted that way. And so we're not the first state to come out of the gates and implement something like this. Secondly, I can't emphasize enough, different schools have different needs. Different schools have different resources that other schools don't have. I mean, some schools have all kinds of teachers that are just so competent with firearms and stuff like that, and just have that attitude of running into a problem rather than running away from a problem. It takes a very special person to handle those situations, and I think the schools realize who they have that might fit this role. And so I commend Representative Thompson, commend Carter for their work.
Just looking back at my education too, is, we had multiple either ex-military or ex-police officers that were our teachers, that I would feel 150% comfortable with them carrying a concealed weapon. And we sit on the House floor, and I could probably point out 25 members that hold a concealed or have a firearm on them. We walk around.
Can they carry in the Capitol?
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Anybody can in the Capitol. We walk around our state every day, and there are people with concealed firearms sitting right next to you.
Can the public come into the Capitol with a weapon?
They can.
That I'm not sure about.
They can.
Yeah.
Yep.
One more question on that, because of the sensitivity that this, came out of after the tragedy in our neighbor town of Perry. Did you have any response directly from Perry in favor of this legislation, or do you have a reading on that? Have you talked to people in Perry about this?
Yeah, most certainly have had conversations with both school leadership and constituents in Perry regarding this. Perry's also dealing with a lot of other things right now, and so we've been helping them. I have a bill that will be coming over to the Senate that helps waive a lot of their graduation requirements and in-class instruction requirements, along with some assessment requirements, and then also allows them to use their management fund to give some retention bonuses to teachers. It's going to be a struggle to retain all those teachers after a tragedy like that, and so we want to make sure there's as much flexibility there. So again, it will be up to Perry. I've heard from a number of people who would be in support of this in Perry, but it would be up to Perry to decide if that was best for their school.
Okay, here's, moving on to another topic.
Could I?
Go ahead, Senator.
One thing on that I'm gonna try to focus on in the future is, I think that's a big problem, and there's only one insurance company that's insuring 98% of schools. And it seems like everybody, private people, our farm business, a lot of farmers and stuff like that, we're seeing the pinch of these insurance premiums and stuff like that. And I think we need to start thinking outside the box of how we view insurance. The whole world should not just revolve around insurance, and insurance is not God. And so I think when it comes to public education and different government entities, I don't see why we can't create risk pools within our government to save money and also make better decisions so that the insurance companies aren't driving.
Interesting. Has that EMC been that way for a long, long time?
Yeah.
That was new to me. I
They
didn't know.
insure most of the cities and county governments as well.
Wow. Okay, let's go, different topic. This is a big one in Greene County, obviously, that broke this week. The latest development in the Summit carbon dioxide pipeline, which includes newly announced miles traversing Greene County from the Dreyfus plant over north of Junction, diagonally through the Squirrel Hollow corridor, down to the Poet ethanol plant near 141 on the Carroll-Greene County line. We understand that House Files 2522 and 565 that affect pipeline surveyors and use of eminent domain are stuck in committee, and we'll see if Senator Greene does not take them into his local government committee and introduce them on the floor. Can we count on that action coming this week? And what would your votes be on both of them? Discuss the pipeline, please.
Sure.
Are everybody aware of what that is? The company Navigator dropped out of running pipelines through our area, so Summit Carbon has picked that up, and they've added 349 miles of proposed pipelines in Iowa now. So it's a huge addition, and it turns out one of them is going to go all the way across the Greene County.
I would vote for the House 90% bill on that. I would also, for me to, well, for one, I can't drop a bill anymore in local government. The last time I could drop a bill in local government was, 3 weeks ago, I think it was.
Because of the funnel?
Because of the funnel. So with that being said, I don't personally have options as chairman. And even when I go back to that point, I spent a lot of time debating about what my personal responsibility should be in that conversation. As chair of a committee, you have the power to drop study bills on different topics that relate to your committee. And so historically, since I've been there, a topic like that does not fit real well with local government, but rather in commerce. And so I struggled whether or not to do something or not with dropping a bill in my committee, and I just knew it would be violating typical Senate procedure as to how we handle legislation, and I didn't feel, as my first time being committee chair, that would be a healthy move for me in my future in representing this district and having influence in the capital. So.
I supported the bill that we sent over to the Senate that Jesse alluded to, had a 90% threshold in it.
And what is the 90% threshold? Remind me.
They would have to receive 90% of voluntary easement before they could apply for eminent domain.
I do think with that, when Navigator went down and that project stopped, you saw an instant spike in more signups because of that, because people started getting afraid that, well, I guess nothing's going to happen, so I better take my money. The difference between Navigator and Summit is Navigator paid like on average 20-30% up front, and then the rest of it would be paid at the completion of the project, whereas Summit, 100% of the money was up front. So that's why you saw a lot higher sign-up rate with Summit. And so when you have that kind of money sitting on the table 100% up front, regardless if the project happens or not, you did see a spike. And I actually think now with Poet joining forces with Summit, I think even if we sign that 90% bill, I just see no reason why they can't get to that 90% threshold with those two working together on this situation. So.
Have you already heard from constituents in Greene County about this? I mean, people alarmed about it when the news broke.
Yeah, there was a number of people at the Capitol this week.
And how do you both line up on just on the larger question here? Are those carbon dioxide pipelines and sequestering this in the caverns up in North Dakota, is this a good thing or not? Are you worried about that, or what's your feelings?
I don't think I believe in the need of it. What I will say though is the markets are beginning to require it. You have places like Illinois and California and New York that are requiring a 0% carbon footprint at these plants. So to sell into those markets, it might be necessary. The science behind it, I don't really, not sure if I buy it completely. With that said, we have to ensure that we have an ethanol industry here and market in the state of Iowa, but we need to balance that with landowners' rights. And we need to make sure we're doing it in an appropriate way. And that's why I supported the 90% threshold bill.
Jesse, how about you overall on the bigger question?
So I think what's a couple things that I've noticed in human nature and stuff like that, within our own Republican Party, when the oil pipeline came through, you didn't see as much backlash on this because we agreed with the product that was going through the pipeline. That to me is wrong. Like, this is about private property rights. It shouldn't be about what commodity is going through a pipe. And so I think, at least within our caucus, we've thoroughly fleshed that out. And that we just need to focus solely on private property rights. I respect all the safety concerns and stuff like that, but that's outside my expertise. That's why we have an Iowa Utilities Board. It's why we have experts at the table. I don't feel like I can sit there and assess whether or not it's safe or not. Like that's above my pay grade. But I think the most disgusting thing with this is the federal government, how they are pushing this, and that's fine. They're the parent in the room. They see something that we don't particularly see, I guess, within the state. But they're the ones that are forcing this project with our tax dollars, and then giving it to private companies. That to me is disgusting, and the general public sees that as well. What is the difference between this pipeline that's coming through the state of Iowa going to South Dakota versus an interstate highway? And to me, we are laying the interstate highway system for something that we don't know where this is going to go. You might see pipes to every hog confinement building by the end of our lives. I don't know what this is going to materialize to. And so the fact that it's public money, public taxpayer dollars forcing this onto the state of Iowa to private companies, there's something that's not right with that, and the public sees that.
Interesting.
You guys
Any
pride
quick
yourself
go ahead.
taking care of minorities and
Say that again.
I say you pride yourselves in taking care of minorities for all kinds of situations. What about the 10% that said no? You're just going to crap on them.
Well, and that's why there's some within our caucus. You have three camps. There's some in the caucus that doesn't think that 90% goes far enough. There's another camp that says why we want to be a business-friendly state. Why change the rules in the middle of the game? That's why we formed the IUB back in the 1970s. We were having this conversation earlier about how much good government happened in the 1970s. So that's that camp. And then the third camp is trying to thread the needle between those other conversations. So you got to have 26 votes, confident votes, to get something passed, and we can't get there. And but then when Navigator shut down, that really tampered the conversation, because they're like, see, the process is playing itself out. We didn't need to act as a legislature, and so really that took the momentum.
Carter, any follow-up?
I think the 90% was the negotiations and where we could get at in the House. I think you'd have the votes for 100%. And again, like Jesse said, we do have an IUB board that is supposed to dig into these issues and is it a public need? So I think the 90% was the appropriate.
Well, can't you detour a pipeline around someone that doesn't want to have the pipeline?
Suppose you can, and then to get to 90%, they may need to.
Well, they have the 10%.
We're going to move on to another topic now. All of this you can follow up with these two after the meeting if you want to. So please feel free to come up and discuss them. It's ridiculous to try to tackle this in 5 minutes here. But the personhood bill that came up in this week and the whole abortion issue, I raised this saying that after Roe versus Wade was overturned and the impetus for change is moved to the states, this issue, as big and complex and as long as it's been around, has a whole new level of public consciousness and feeling and debate. So what do you think is going to happen on this issue in this session and going forward? What do you expect the outcome to be in Iowa at this point?
So the bill that we passed changed the definition to a definition that is already in Iowa code. And so we disagree with the Democrats' notion that this is a personhood bill. And what it does is essentially, if you kill a baby in the womb, the penalty is raised. For an example, causing the death of an unborn child through OWI is raised from a Class C felony to a Class B felony. That's all the bill does.
And is that as far as it's going to go in this session?
Oh, the Senate's gonna have a conversation.
Yeah, it's in the Senate.
So in the Senate, there's a few conversations happening on this topic. The House passed out Olivia bill, which requires schools to show baby Olivia video to 7th grade on up.
Or a video like it.
Or
Doesn't have to be, yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that part. So Sandy Salmon's managing it in the Senate, so I'm not personal on that one. But so you're seeing a few different conversations come up. It'll be interesting how that plays out. There's an amendment that's been drafted to the Houses on that to, I think, create just more clarity on the parameters and make sure that schools realize that it doesn't have to be a baby Olivia video, it can be something else. I'm glad you clarified that. Yesterday was the first that I heard of the House's bill as far as the personhood bill, but all eyes are on June. It's probably going to be June when we hear from the Supreme Court on the heartbeat bill, and I think when it comes to life conversations, that's probably 90% of what people are focused on is what's going to happen at that time. Sure, we'll go through these bills, and I understand, I appreciate the House is moving on these different topics, and I'm sure we'll get something done on one of those bills and go forward. But
And that's in June. You're talking about the Iowa Supreme Court ruling, right? That's anticipated. Okay.
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
that's going to pave the way for what politics looks like in Iowa in the near future. So.
Okay. Again, way too little time to cover that today. But come forward with your questions or discussions with both Representative Nordman and Senator Green. Wind up time. A couple minutes from each of you if you want to.
I'll appreciate you guys being here, appreciate the conversation. My cell number and email always open, always appreciate hearing from you on issues. So I try to get back to everybody personally as quickly as I can. So if I don't, send me another one and tell me to respond, because I will eventually. So I do appreciate the amount of input that I get from my constituents. We have a very active district, and that's a good thing.
Senator?
Well, yeah, that's interesting. Carter brings that up. I remember my first year being in office, and I asked research staff, I'm like, who do you hear the most issues come up from? And they're like, Boone, Greene County. So
Well,
I forgot to share that with you guys, that you guys made the top of the list on that. So, and I appreciate that. I mean, it makes us think about these issues inside and out, and I've learned so much through this process. When I graduated high school, I always wanted to go to college, and I didn't have the opportunity to, and I would have studied religion and political science, and the Lord has blessed me now to be able to give me my real life education in politics, and I'm able to study online through Emmaus Bible College. And so I feel like the most blessed person in the world. I feel blessed to represent you guys, and I'm really proud to bring some youth to the Senate. Carter brings some youth to the House, and I think you see that energy play out in our caucuses. Carter runs so many heavy bills, and it seems like anything you throw at Carter, he just knows how to run with it. I'm a little bit slower than Carter, but when I get behind an issue, I'm going to give 110% to make sure it gets to the governor's desk. So, yep.
Thank
Jesse's
you.
my hype man.
Well, thank you
That's
all
why
so
I
much
bring it.
for the time. We appreciate you coming. Do we know when the next one
Let's
is?
give it a round of applause. Thank you.
Do we know when the next one is, Danielle?
Second Saturday of April.
Second Saturday of April.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.
Which is is that our last one? Yeah.
Oh, don't miss that one.
Don't miss that one.
Unless you keep going on for months and months.
Which might happen.
Thank you, fellas.
Thank you, John.